Bubba Scrubba, Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis, Volume 3, Episode 4, Marker. Morning, everybody. Continuing my series of fantasy football previews. Training camps open, or rookies reported this last weekend, and we're going into the first week of training camp, so we're going to continue our uh, fantasy football reviews. Today, we're going to do the NFC South. Just for a little background, I've been watching the NFL continuously since 1984. I've been playing fantasy sports since 2002, and I've been the commissioner of my own fantasy league, fantasy football league, since 2008. In that league, we run a PPR point per reception, so that's going to inform these rankings a little bit. Let's get into it. First team on our list is the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans has an interesting team. Last year, probably their number one overall player, I would say, to draft is Chris Olave or Olavi. I can't ever remember how to pronounce his name. We'll call him Olave for the purposes of this video. I believe I picked him up in the 4th or 5th round last year. He came through for me in a big way. Obviously, he's a very well-established receiver. You're probably still going to not pick him anywhere sooner than, let's say, the 3rd or 4th round, but so long as he stays healthy. The new quarterback, Tyler Show, who was a rookie last year, showed enough to get this guy 100 balls and over 1,000 yards and close to 10 touchdowns. I don't remember his exact stats, but the guy did come up for me last year. So I highly recommend him as a middle round wide receiver 2, or if you're doing really well, wide receiver 3. His running mate is going to be a rookie named Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. This guy has all the physical tools, but I guess had trouble staying healthy in college. Rookie wide receivers for me are tough. Every so often, there are guys like this Tet McMillan, which we'll talk about here in a few teams, that come out strong and have a decent season. But I mean, there is really no rookie wide receiver that's going to come out and be a dominator, top 5 player or whatever. So God only knows what we have with this Tyson. Obviously, training camp and preseason games are going to do a lot to inform us as to how big his role is going to be, how acclimated he is to the league already, et cetera, et cetera. You could do a lot worse as far, as of this video, and we'll come back and revise this as we, get deeper into the preseason. But you could do a lot worse than a late round flyer, which is, I think, basically what he's worth. Tyler Show, again, the quarterback. This is year 2. He seems to be the unquestioned starter going into year 2. There's nothing necessarily spectacular about this guy's profile. It's more in the QB2 range, obviously. He's probably going to go undrafted in most 10-team leagues and probably 12-team leagues. A potential streamer guy. I mean, who knows? I mean, obviously, that's why they play the game. So this guy could show up out of nowhere and be a superstar. Very unlikely. Again, an undraftable player, and maybe somebody you would stream in a bye week in a pinch, or if you have massive injuries. More interesting is the Saints' backfield. So they got Etienne from the Jaguars this last offseason, and he's a pretty decent player. Obviously catches the ball well out of the backfield, is pretty slippery, has a lot of wiggle in his game. Had a really good season for Jackson. The last year and a half, he's been a pretty high-end fantasy player. I would say that this guy's probably worth maybe he's going in the 3rd or 4th round. I'll have to, come back to this, once I do a few mock drafts and see where guys are landing. But I mean, if I was coming up on this guy in the 4th round or so and I needed a running back, if you're, doing 0 RB strategy or hero RB strategy, potentially this is the guy that you would play at the 2nd slot. Alvin Kamara is still there, just reworked his contract. Obviously, he's been a mainstay with this team for the last 5, 6, 7+ years. But over 30 years old now, he's slowing down a little bit. He's still going to get, some run on the field. Obviously, I think it's obvious he's going to be more of a 3rd down back and not, getting as many carries in the first 2 downs. That's going to be Etienne's role. But he's still going to be involved if he's healthy. I'm not saying you could, count on this guy for some kind of resurgent season, but Now that he has a quality player to split the load with, I mean, he could be a pretty decent value pick to maybe catch 50 plus balls. So in a PPR league, this is extremely valuable. And you could probably get him fairly deep. I would say 10th round or later for Kamara. Last is Juwan Johnson, the tight end. This guy is a sneaky player. He's kind of in the vein of a um, let me think about this for a second. Like a Mike Gesicki potentially. We'll get to him next week as far as these kind of sneakier tight ends that don't have big names but do have spiked weeks from time to time. He's not going to be a guy that you can count on week to week and say, oh, he's going to catch me 5 balls for 60 yards and maybe get you a touchdown. But the games he goes off, he'll get you 5 catches for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. The next team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In years past, the Buccaneers were a more interesting team because they had Mike Evans. But now, the receiver group is something of a quagmire. Now, the number one guy is the Emeka Egbuika. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Out of Ohio State, he was a rookie last year, the year before. I can't remember anyway. Um, he is the bona fide kind of number one guy. The beginning part of last year, the guy was showing brilliantly up until about week 8, and then he just completely fell off. I think he got injured and, was playing through something, which is the case for a lot of these guys, but also so was Baker Mayfield. He was playing injured. And so obviously, if you have an injured receiver, an injured quarterback, that's not the recipe for fantasy success. I am not shying away from this guy this year. I still think that based off of the first half of the season, his price tag is going to be probably a little bit high, fourth round, fifth round, something like that. I don't think that that's a bad place for him, especially if Baker's healthy this year. And I think he's playing for a contract. So he's going to be motivated to put up some big numbers. And this guy, Egbuika, is going to be motivated to establish himself as the bona fide number one receiver in the room there. Still have Chris Godwin around. He had come off of a massively bad injury, where he had dislocated his foot and there was a bone sticking out. This is a couple years ago. He started off the season last year, I believe, on the PUP list and was out for multiple weeks as he kind of worked himself back in. Obviously, he has a full off season now. Godwin isn't anybody sexy. He's not explosive. He's more of a possession type receiver. But in this offense, he could still get you 80 balls, 90 balls. As a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, you could do a lot worse. But you're not going to pick this guy anywhere before round 8, I would think, or something like that. But he's a classic one of these guys that I feel like you ignore him. A lot of people ignore him because of the fact that it's not sexy. He's not the flavor of the week. He's not some super rookie or whatever. But kind of like Olave last year, he's just a guy that's super steady. So, now coming off of a relative, a full off season of relative health, he could be back to, providing the value that he had before the injury. I wouldn't shy away from this pick either, especially as we see how the Tampa Bay receiving room sorts itself out, in the offense and who separates themselves. Baker Mayfield's the quarterback. Obviously, the last year was kind of a lost season for him due to injury. But the previous couple seasons, I mean, this guy was like 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. And he was one of these guys that maybe didn't get drafted or got drafted super late. A free agent pickup that you go, oh, all of a sudden, you drafted somebody else to be your QB1 and Baker outplays him. You know what I mean? And you're starting Baker down the stretch. This could be a very big bounce back season for him. Again, he's kind of a low end QB1, I feel like. If you're fully loaded everywhere else and you're punting the quarterback position and Baker's the guy that falls to you, you could do a lot worse. I kind of feel like he has a lot to prove. He's already shown that he can be a player at this level. I wouldn't shy away from drafting him, but you kind of, I feel like, potentially have to have a decent backup for him or a plan B in case it doesn't work out. The running back situation has changed just a little bit. Bucky Irving is, in play as a second round / third round pick. In the last few years, he's, was splitting carries with Rashad White, and then he also had Sean Tucker to vulture touchdowns, although Bucky did get a fair share of touchdowns. He's kind of a do everything back. He can catch it a little bit. He's definitely a decent runner. He can punch it in. I think this season, so the Bucks lost Rashad White to Washington, and they brought in Kenneth Gainwell from formerly Philadelphia and then Pittsburgh the last few seasons. And Gainwell has been playing pretty well the last few years in Pittsburgh. Definitely a third down pass catching type guy. I feel like that role is more defined for Gainwell, meaning that Irving is going to be the guy in first and second down and probably going to get most of the goal line reps, although Sean Tucker was re-signed, so he is still there to potentially vulture. But I like Bucky. He was injured. He was banged up quite a bit last year. So hopefully, as a younger player, they tend to bounce back, obviously, a little bit better. But I would not be shying away from drafting him. I think he could have a very decent season. Gainwell, again, is another guy that I think is draftable, although in the 8+ round, 10th round, something like that. Obviously, you have to see what his role is going to be. But if we project it out as the third down back, a check down guy, something like that, he's probably going to challenge for 50 catches, which is extremely valuable in the PPR space. The last player to worth mentioning is the tight end Cade Otton. He's been a steady performer. He's nothing sexy. He's kind of like a Juwan Johnson. I would say so. If you compare Juwan Johnson and Cade Otton, Juwan Johnson will potentially get you more touchdowns and have more touchdown spike weeks. Cade Otton will get you more consistent catches, let's say 3 to 4 catches a week, maybe 50 yards. You'll be lucky if you squeeze a touchdown out of this guy, though. The next team on the list is the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta is a very unusual team this year, considering that they've basically kind of semi-overhauled the quarterback room. But the whole thing begins and ends with Bijan Robinson. I spoke about this when I talked about our profile, Jamar Gibbs from Detroit. Really, it boils down to what is your preference. Bijan, Gibbs, they're fairly interchangeable between the 1 and 2 positions. Personally, I would say that I think I would probably rather have Gibbs, and that's only because I feel like Detroit is a more cohesive team, a more cohesive offensive unit that has better overall players than Atlanta does. That being said, Atlanta does have a new coach. They brought in Kevin Stefanski from Cleveland. Now, Cleveland, of course, but at the same time, I think this guy did a decent job with the offense, with the pieces that he had. The thought is that now if he has some actual bona fide playmakers and kind of a fresh environment, that this guy is going to be able to unlock another gear for some of these players. I find it very hard to believe that he's going to be able to unlock a gear in Bijan, because Bijan is already operating at peak efficiency. Maybe some more catches, but with Bijan, you're profiling 300 plus carries, 1,500 yards, maybe 2,000 yards from scrimmage if you include receiving yards, 10 plus touchdowns, maybe another 5 plus touchdowns receiving, home run hitting ability every time he touches the ball. No more Tyler Algier there to vulture touchdowns. They brought in Brian Robinson, formerly of the Washington football team, and then he played on the 49ers last year as a backup. He's not a horrible player, but he is not a guy that's coming for Bijan Robinson's workload. I would just say I would prefer Gibbs because I just prefer Detroit's the offense and overall team to Atlanta, but flip a coin, whatever. The other top end player in this offensive group is Drake London. He's probably going to be at least a second round. If you're getting him in the third round, you're doing well. This guy should be good for 100 catches, although I am a little hesitant about the quarterback situation. Kirk Cousins, as much as, he's an older player, is still fairly efficient and just knows what he has to do to move the ball. So that's get the ball out quickly and to his best receiver as much as possible. So London was set up for success last year. He did have some injuries. I wouldn't shy away from him. Actually, with the group that they have in the quarterback room right now, this might actually work out well for him if Stefanski gets cute and kind of moves him all over the field. He's at the boundary, he's in the slot, etc., kind of moving him around and just manufacturing touches by moving him across the formation. If they do that, then London will be fine. The other big name player out of this group is Kyle Pitts at tight end. What is there to say about Kyle Pitts? This guy has burned so many people for so many years. I mean, I think he was a top 10 pick coming out of Florida. I mean, this guy has monster prototypical size and wheels for a tight end, and yet just constantly never delivered. I mean, the guy was one touchdown, maybe two touchdowns a season for 4 or 5 straight years. Then last year, out of nowhere, has a monster season. And I don't even want to say he had a monster season, he had a monster stretch of games. And I think now that people have seen his overall potential, he's being overdrafted, in my opinion, as maybe a top three guy. I will be passing on Kyle Pitts. I'll let somebody else take the plunge on him. Obviously, I wouldn't be surprised if he backs up last season with another monster season this year. Physically, the guy is that good. And sometimes, they just have to, mentally unlock something in order for a player to really, reach their true potential in the league. But I've been burned by this guy so many times in the past. I'll, either go in another direction with the top end guy at tight end, which is kind of my strategy usually, or I'll just ignore the position altogether. In the quarterback room, you have now Michael Penix coming off of a ACL, or I think it was a partially torn ACL. Kirk Cousins is gone, and they brought in Tua Tagovailoa from Miami to compete with Penix. Now, the smart thing that they did here is both of these guys are left-handed, so they're not going to have to redesign the offense if one guy gets hurt and the other guy takes over, because the ball's coming out of the same arm in the same arm slot. That being said, obviously with Tua, there's, the concerns are real. They're well known. They're well documented with the concussions. He's one brain bounce away from, being out of the league basically. But I mean, honestly, I think being in a new environment is going to be good for him. I think Atlanta is a good spot for him because they do have a lot of weapons. They do have an awesome running game. So it's something that he can lean on, and he is a very, very accurate passer. So if they can protect him and he can avoid the concussions. All signs point to him being the week one starter because Penix is still rehabbing his injury. Penix was drafted as being the quote unquote future of the franchise, but more to come. I wouldn't be surprised if both of these guys, kind of split the starting duties this year, either because of injury or ineffectiveness. Although I would not be surprised if Tua starts off strong, kind of like, has a season a few years ago, like in Miami, where he looked unstoppable, but then, the dreaded concussion, rears its ugly head. No pun intended. The last team in the division is the Carolina Panthers. This is a tough team to clock. I mean, last year they were a playoff team, kind of a dark horse playoff team. I do feel like they're kind of on the way up because they do have some interesting position players. And this is going to be outside of their number one receiver, this Tet McMillan, who is probably going to be drafted, let's say, in the third or fourth round, I would imagine. The rest of their guys are going to be more under the radar guys that you can get deep and, fill out a position group, specifically the wide receiver position. So McMillan, let's just talk about him. He was a rookie last year. He had prototypical size, definitely a good red zone threat. Did kind of get better as the season went on as well. I think a lot of people are projecting kind of a second year kind of breakout potentially for him, but I just don't see it. Not because of him. I just think Bryce Young is a limited player overall. He's a limited flawed player. Never should have been the number one overall pick. He's done well to kind of get his career back on track a little bit, but I mean, you're at the mercy of Bryce Young taking another step forward this year. I think that's hard to project. I think it's hard to make a case to justify that. Therefore, I'll be passing on him. That being said, the rest of the receiver room is budget city. So Jalen Coker definitely had a big second half of the season last year. I believe was another rookie, and now they're kind of holding him up as potentially the wide receiver two in this offense. Although they did draft this Xavier Legette from a couple of years ago. I think he was a second round pick out of FSU. And they expected him to be the guy, but he's been injured or ineffective or whatever. They're going to battle it out. It's really going to be interesting to see which player is going to be on the boundary and which player will be in the slot. If I had to guess, I think Legette will be outside and Coker will be in the slot. If Coker is in the slot and that's kind of his exclusive position, and especially if they go more three wide this year because of a lack of decent running backs on the roster. I think Coker could be an extreme value, could push for 80 catches this year if all things kind of go his way. And I think that's Bryce Young's sweet spot. I don't think he's not a deep ball thrower. He's not a 20-yard plus on a rope thrower to the boundary. He's an over the middle guy. And so peppering the slot receiver, I think, is a viable offensive scheme for Carolina. Therefore, Coker, who I think you can get. I mean, I think there's a little bit of hype around this guy. So a guy that I would say would be more in the 8 to 10 range might be going in the 6 to 8 range. I'm not sure I'm picking this guy in the 6th or 7th round, but if he's in the 8th round and I need a wide receiver, I would pull the trigger on him potentially. Um, Bryce Young, I don't really. There's not much to say about him. I mean, he's a middling player. He's playing for a contract this year. I mean, Carolina did make the playoffs last year, but I feel like it's more of a sum of the parts kind of thing rather than him elevating the whole offense. I think they're winning kind of in spite of him, not because of him. But that's just my personal opinion. I mean, he never say never. He could take a step forward, especially playing for a new contract, but he lacks prototypical size, arm strength, etc. His whole thing coming out of Bama was his intangibles, and the NFL game has proved to be too fast and too physical for him. The running back position, there's not much to say here. I mean, it's not sexy, but this guy gets it done every year. Is this Chuba Hubbard? Still is now still standing as the bona fide starter because I think Dowdle is now yes, Dowdle went someplace else. I think he's in Pittsburgh now. So Hubbard is the number one guy again. He's going to be on the field for some catching downs as well. The reason I say he's the last man standing is because the backup is this guy, Jonathan Brooks, who they had spent a fairly high draft pick on 2 years ago and had an ACL injury and aggravated it and had trouble rehabbing it. It just hasn't been the same player. This season, they're saying that this guy is finally healthy. So we're going to be watching him in the preseason to see if he has explosiveness, if he has wiggle, what he's going to offer the Panthers on the field. Now, if this guy Brooks shows something, then obviously he's going to get some reps. And I'm not saying we'll steal the job outright, but this is one of those situations where a guy could come out of nowhere and be maybe not a league winner, but somebody who could basically be an unexpected force, maybe even early in the season. We'll see. Maybe I'm overstating what this guy can do. Nobody has seen it, but the thing about it is, and this is like this Marshawn Lloyd off of Green Bay, because these guys have been injured for a couple of seasons, nobody's seen what they can really do. I don't want to discount them, and I'd like to highlight players like this because of the fact that you can get them for cheap. They're going to go undrafted, or you can pick them up as a free agent. They have a big first week. These are the kind of guys you need to keep an eye on. Well, that's it for the NFC South. So next we'll start, I guess we'll just kind of go back in reverse order. We'll go AFC South will be the next video. That will be released in a couple of days. I'm enjoying doing these preview videos. I'm going to really enjoy doing these NFL videos throughout the year. I do really enjoy talking fantasy football. Haven't seen any comments yet, whatever. Obviously, it's not getting a lot of views yet, but I hope that it starts to get some traction, and I hope to talk to you guys soon about football. Have a nice day.